Start of tonight's great debate, Angela Rye and Steve Cortes. Thank you both. Angela Rye, you can't call a Jewish guy a white nationalist. White nationalists hate Jews. And if you do it, you're being anti-Semitic. Do you accept that criticism?
I don't.
Why?
Because Stephen Miller is a white nationalist, and he's been one since before going into high school when he told one of his childhood friends, Chris, that they could no longer be friends because of his Latino heritage. Stephen Miller, if he's not a white nationalist, has certainly trafficked in white nationalism since high school. He went on to Duke doing the same things. He is a provocateur. He is behind many of the president's most hateful policies. He's undermined the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security by sending some of the things she was working on to conservative outlets. He is absolutely a white nationalist. He is absolutely fine with it. And there are people all over Los Angeles, where I'm sitting right now, who can demonstrate support for this from Exhibit A to Z. White nationalist he is, and that does not make Ilhan Omar anti-Semitic. It makes Donald Trump a troll because he knows what the people have been saying about her as of late, and he continues to divide instead of trying to understand why people may see this senior advisor of his as a white nationalist.
Cortes, why does Miller being Jewish end the conversation for you?
Well, first, I have to say, Angela, I really find it almost laughable that you're going to tell us that we should believe that he's a racist because somebody claims that they heard it on the playground in Los Angeles 20 years ago.
Said?
I mean, that's hardly evidence. Yeah, actually, it's exactly what you said.
No, it's
that's hardly evidence.
Not what I said. There was no mention of a playground. And furthermore, that was one example citing that it's not new to him. He's true to this. That's what it means, Steve.
Here's what's important. He is absolutely a nationalist. He's an American nationalist. So am I, by the way, very proudly so. Whiteness has nothing to do with it. America's not a race. And I would also point out that tolerating largely open borders, which is a situation we have in this country, is most problematic, is most dangerous for Hispanic Americans. So my community, brown people in this country, are the ones who suffer the most from our permissive border policies. We're the ones who have to deal with MS-13. When you look at the victims, for instance, they almost always have Hispanic surnames. We're the ones who have to compete in the labor market against illegal immigrant labor in a totally unfair system. So in actuality, defending America and defending our border not only defends all Americans, but it particularly protects minority Americans who suffer the most.
Chris, can I just
Please go ahead, Angela.
I think it's really important when we have conversations like this to ground them in fact. So if it's okay, Chris, I would love to understand what Steve's definition of nationalism is to him. Perhaps that may be the root of our problem. We don't understand it the same way. What's your definition, Steve?
Nationalism, American nationalism specifically, is pride in this country and shared values in our Constitution. Things like tolerance, free enterprise.
How's that different than
the rule of
patriotism?
law? The rule of law. This is nationalism because every country. Look, and by the way, to me they're synonymous. Largely. They're synonymous. But the left, the left. It's not a loaded term. The left has tried to turn it into a loaded term. It's only loaded when you attach white to it. Okay.
When has it been used as a major political movement that it didn't have white attached to it?
Nationalism, by the way, it's also one reason nationalism is a correct term today instead of just patriotism. Is nationalism is the antithesis of globalism. Globalism says that we forego our sovereignty, that we subscribe to multilateral structures in the world, and that America's interests don't necessarily come first.
Isolationism is the opposite of globalism.
Nationalism is the opposite of globalism.
From a political philosophy standpoint, it is. Isolationism is the opposite of globalism.
No,
you can disagree. You're wrong.
It's not America alone. No, I'm not wrong. It's not America alone, but it is. No, I'm not wrong, Chris. It's not America alone, but it is America first. And that is the definition of nationalism, of saying we will not let the United Nations run America. Just like people in France who are nationalists will say we will not let Brussels run.
Look, I like that Angela wanted us to get on the same page in terms of what we're thinking. I dig it. Look, I dig it. It's important to hear as part of disagreement with decency. Here's the problem, though, to get it back to the record, okay? What Miller has done, his heritage, his religion, his blood aside, what he has done with his life gives him reasons for criticism and an apparent affinity for people who are part of ugly movements that say the same things. For example, the rhetoric surrounding the travel ban. And
his campaign. He rolled out his campaign saying that Mexicans were drug dealers and rapists. And as
He
a
did not say
brown
that.
person, yes, he did,
Yes, he
Steve.
did.
And as a brown
No,
person,
he said
I will never
among them.
understand.
No. He said they're
Okay.
sending us rapists and killers and,
And
some,
drug
I
dealers.
assume, are nice people.
Yes, and look, I will be the first to say, as I've said many times, I do not like his word choice.
Don't defend it.
And
Then don't
I
defend
know.
it.
Hold on. No,
That's
but
just
Chris, attack him for what he actually said, not
I
what
just
he
told
didn't
you
say.
what he
For
actually
example,
said.
I know what he actually
what he
said
said is
because I was
that
stunned.
among
not what he
people
said.
who come here,
No.
among people who come here illegally,
Let me tell you something.
The main
Let me
part
tell
is
you.
the bad part. You know it.
Contact with
Go ahead,
enemy.
Andrew.
I don't.
Let me say this.
You may not know it. You
is-
should know it then. I reform my question. Go ahead, Andrew.
among your definition today, the first part of which I completely can align with, but not under nationalism, perhaps under patriotism.
Contact
But
with
also
enemy.
in your definition, among the many that you offered, was an idea of superiority, and I think that is exactly the problem. That is
Enemy in
exactly
sight.
why Donald Trump is compared to Hitler. It is
Changing mag,
exactly
cover.
why Stephen Miller has been called a white nationalist, a white supremacist, a racist, someone who is xenophobic, someone who is hateful about Muslims, someone who is a very hateful individual who's rooted his policy positions and debates in hate and fear mongering because people are worried about losing their what? First position in the world. That is why Make America Great Again is so frustrating to so many of us. That is why white nationalism and white supremacy that we saw at the Charlottesville riots and protests were problematic when Donald Trump said there are good people on both sides. That
he
is
didn't
why
say that.
all of that is.
that's a hoax.
Okay, Steve.
He did not say that. I just wrote an entire article about this. Look at
read
the
it.
full text. Look at the full video. He did not say there are fine people on both sides. He was talking about the monument debate. He was not talking about neo-Nazis. And for you to say
Okay, you know
otherwise
what? Well, then
is
let's
fake
talk
news.
about the monument.
And that is not
You want to tell
true.
me that there were Confederates who were good people when they were slave
Hold
owners
on.
and fighting to?
No. He didn't say
You're talking
Confederates
about
were good people.
monuments
He said,
now, right?
He said there are good people on both sides of the monument debate. And by the way, there are good people on both sides of the monument debate. Now, I have
Okay,
one who
well, I don't
prefer
know
that those
any of
monuments. I prefer that those monuments not stand myself, but I will certainly not say that everyone who wants to preserve historical markers, even
You're down a
markers that
rabbit
represent
hole.
people who made a lot of mistakes, that those markers should all come out. That those people aren't. There are fine people on both sides of the monument. That is
Well,
something that is
let me
just
tell you
clearly
what,
true.
they've got
What
bad
the president
points.
did
Find
not
people
say.
with bad ideas.
I agree.
Because they're
I agree.
racist.
I don't agree
Their
with them.
racist ideology should not stand in the
All right,
Yeah,
world.
hold on a second. I got a different
for you
point.
to
I
make
wanna
the
redirect
jump that
this.
they're racist.
I want to
It's
redirect
racist
is not true.
ideology.
I get it, but we exhausted this point. I want to redirect this a little bit.
Reloading.
Steve, when they brought Candace Owens there today, okay, when she was at the hearing, that was, in my humble estimation, you tell me if you disagree.
Enemy down.
She was there to blow up that hearing and to expose it for what she believes it is. I think that kind of dovetails a little bit with the Stephen Miller thing in terms of this. Forget about white nationalism. I'm just talking about extremism of thought. You invite Candace Owens there because you want to blow it up. You want to blow up what was going on in that hearing, talking about issues that the right doesn't like to deal with and doesn't like getting used as a cudgel against them. And I think you have to ask yourself, is that a good strategy if your goal is to build from your